that Yomi is from Metzia Tzadi Zayin, from Metzia 97. We're going to start on the bottom of 96b. We're going to start 5 lines from the bottom. The Gemara has been discussing the idea that if the object that you borrowed broke, but it broke in the normal process of use, that you're going to be exempt. So who gavra deshal narga mechavre. So there was a person who borrowed an axe from his friend. Today's daf yomi is dedicated for Yeshua, for Am Yisrael, Shmir for the Chayalim. That's all for the Shvuyim. So there's a person who borrowed an axe from his friend, and the axe broke. He came before Rava, Amrway. Said to Rava, Zil Isi Zahadi, Rav Shani Spay. So Rava said to him, bring witnesses that you were using it in the normal manner and you'd be exempt, be potter. So the Gemara asks, let's say he doesn't have witnesses. Is he going to be responsible to pay for that? So Tashmad, so let's learn that from the following case. Do Gavra Deshel Narga Mechaver, there's a person who borrowed an axe from his friend, and it broke. Also coming to Rav, he came for Rav. Rav said to him, Rav said, pay him a totally new axe. Give him a completely new axe. So Amalei Rav Kahana Rav Asi. So Rav Kahana Rav Asi said to Rav, Dina, is it really the case that he has to give him a completely new axe? But and the way Rashi explains it, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah? Didn't we learn in the Brisa in Bava Kama with respect to the fact that we say a fundamental idea that the owners are that they have the carcass, means to say that he just has to pay him the pieces plus the difference, and he doesn't have to give him a completely new axe. So he asked this question to Rav, Shastik Rav, and Rav was quiet, which proves that that's correct, that you only have to pay the difference. You don't have to give him a completely new axe. So Gemara says, "Ve'ochasa karav kahana v'ravasi v'mahado etavra u'mamayu edmei." And indeed, that's the halacha. The law is like Rav Kahana Ravasi, that all you have to do is give him back the broken pieces and then pay the difference. If in a case where you don't have witnesses, how it broke. Oh, Gavra the Shal Dava Mechaver is a person who borrowed a bucket from his friend. It borrowed, the bucket broke. Also coming to our papa, Amroi I see Sadi do Oshanas baby Iftar. Says, okay, bring witnesses that the bucket you borrowed was being used in the normal manner of use, and then you'll be exempt. Ahu Gavra, there was a man, the Shal Shunra Mechaver, he borrowed a cat from his friend. Chavar Aleah Achbari v'Katula. The mice ganged up on the cat and killed it. Yosef Ravashi becoming Baile. So Ravashi was sitting there and he asked him the question, Ki Agav Nemai. Ravashi said, is that really going to be considered like if it died in the normal manner of use? In a case where the mice killed the cat that you borrowed? Oh, is this considered like it died in the normal manner of use? He said that's indeed what was said in the name of Rava, a man who women kill, meaning his expression, meaning to say that this man, who was, what does it mean? He was killed by a lot of women. He was engaged in relations with many women. We're going to say that he has no case. He can't claim. So too this cat, it died in the normal manner of use. That's called Mesa Machmas Malacha. That died in the normal manner of use. And so therefore we're going to say that the owner of the person who borrowed is exempt. We're in the middle of 97A. So, Ika de Amri, others say the following. Achil Achbarik Tuva. So other people's version of the story was that if let's say the cat that you borrowed to clean up your place from rodents ate a lot of mice, and because it ate so many mice, it died. So Yasser Ravashi Mekayim. So Ravashi was wanting to say, is this a case where it died in a normal manner of use? And so for this reason, the person who borrowed will be exempt. The man who was killed by the women in this manner, he has no case. He has no case and no judgment. Meaning to say that this is the normal manner of use, and so therefore the borrower is exempt. Next case, 97a. Amar Rava, Haiman debaylo mishal midei mechavre v'lifter. Now Rava says, well, I want to tell you how you can be exempt. You want to borrow something from your friend and you'll be exempt. Namely, you should say to your friend, Ashkai and Maya, he said, when you're going to, when somebody asks you to borrow something, basically when you go to borrow something from your friend, what you should say is, also pour me some water. Because that way the person who's lending you, let's say he's lending you his car, you'll say, pour me some water. Well, now he's working for you at the same time. And we said that one of the exemptions, there are two exemptions that a borrower can have. One is if it breaks in the normal manner of use. And second, if the owner is working for you or lending himself to you at the outset of the activity. So the owner is with the object you're borrowing at the moment of the borrowing. So therefore, if you want to get around this, you should say to him when he lends it to you, pour me some water. So because that's considered borrowing something with the owner being in your use at the time. But if the owner is smart, namely, you should say to him, Shal Baresha, first borrow the object, and then I'll pour you some water. Amar Rava, so now Rava teaches us a principle about this. There's Mikre Didar, the case. So let's say you're a teacher of children, a young children's Torah teacher. Shatola, so Shatola, this is somebody who's basically like a sharecropper that you plant the vineyards for the city and you get half the profit, meaning to say you're working for the city, you're working on city land, city farmer, and you get half the profit. And then we have the next case is a tabacha, a butcher. So the butcher is somebody who slaughters and checks their animals. He's working for the town because he's not doing his own animals, he's doing everybody else's animals. Umna is the basically the person who, like the community doctor, he lets out their blood. Sapar, the barber, Sapar Mata, the barber of the city, he cool on all these people. If you borrow an object from them, Bi'idan aviditayu. So if you borrow an object from them while they are doing their work, that's going to be considered like you borrowed something from while the owner is working for you. Because since they are always working for the town, so therefore it's like while they're doing their work, they're working for you. And so therefore, if you borrowed something, it's like the owner is with you. So Amrle Rabbana or Rava, so after Rava said this teaching, Rabban said to him, so they said, Shal on Mar. So they said to him, the Rabban said to Rava, you yourself are lent out to us, meaning to say you're always working for us. Why? And we'll see why in a moment. And the reason is because you're teaching us Torah all day, and so therefore, if we borrowed an animal from you and the animal died, we should be exempt from having to pay. So they say, you yourself are always working for us. This is at first glance very difficult. How could the student speak to their Rebbe like that? So it seems incredibly disrespectful. So the Kosi Yeshuos, it says that they were trying to be respectful to him and say that he's like somebody who's always lending them because in the case of the lender, all the benefit comes to the borrower, and so therefore Rava is doing such an incredible thing, and so therefore they're getting all the benefit from Rava. But Rava got upset because he says, "Well, in this case, you're costing me money." Anyway, so they said, you're borrowed to us, so you're lent to us, so ikbid. So he got upset. Amrlo, we said to them, You want to get rid of my money because that way you want to claim that I'm always working for you. So if I lend you something else, that you don't have to pay me back. But just the opposite. You are lent to me. Why? Because you are lent to me to learn from me Torah. Why? Because let's say I want to go from one tractate to another, you're not able to stop me. And so therefore, basically, it's not like I'm working for you. You're working for me because I can always change the topic. I can always change the tractate. But it's not so simple, says the Gemara. There would be the 2 months of the year called the Yarchikala, months before Pesach and months before Rosh Hashanah, where they had to come and they had to learn about the topic of the holiday. And so during those months, the Rebbe was borrowed to the students because during those months they couldn't change the topic. But the other months of the year, the student was lent to the Rebbe because the Rebbe could always change the topic. How do we know that you have to learn the Torah study 1 month before the holiday? Because Moshe instituted, we learned in the Gemara Megillah, that Moshe instituted for the Jewish people that they have to be Sholem V'Dorshim, they have to study the festival around that time of the festival. And Rashi explains the sources, V'Daber Moshe Moedei Hashem al Bnei Yisrael. It doesn't say, didn't Moshe learn all the commandments from God and say them to Jewish people to tell us that you have to say the holidays and the festivals before the holidays? So there's a dispute. Does this apply just to Pesach or is it to all the holidays? And what about Shavuos? How are you going to study the laws of Shavuos for 30 days before the holiday? We see from here that all the festivals, according to this source, need to be studied. Rashi says, you are lent to me, for my work, because when I want to start a new tractate, that I will not forget it, you're not allowed to stop me. Okay. So, Marema Barchanina, Oger Kodnaisa, Bechozai. So, Marema Barchanina, he rented out his mule to the people in the place called Chozai. Marema went out to help the lift up the package that they were carrying and to put it on the mule. In the end, Pashuba Umes. In the end, the people were renting were negligent, and the mule died. Asla Kami de Rava. So the renters came to Rava to say, do they have to pay? Chayvinu. Rava said, you have to pay. Why do they have to pay? They were negligent, but the owner was there. Marema Bar Chanina was there. And we have a position about negligence with the owner. That one position says that you'd be exempt. So Rava was embarrassed. So if they go in Milsa, the Meser Tuuno enough. In the end, it came out that Marema only went out to see that he wasn't going out to work for them, but he really just went out to see them putting it on the mule. And he wanted to make sure that they weren't putting on too heavy a load. And so therefore, he wasn't working for them at all. And so therefore, of course, they're obligated to pay. But anyway, the Gemara says, their claim would only have been good according to the one that says that if you're negligent when the owner is with you, you'd be exempt. And that's why Rabba was embarrassed. According to one who says that that negligence with the owner is responsible. Why was he embarrassed? Even if there was negligence with the owner, it would be exempt. Gemara says, "Lo mivsha pashalahu elignuve ignov." So it's not that the renters. It wasn't that the renters were negligent. Elignuve ignov. It was stolen. Umeisa kedarka beganafavi, and it died in the normal manner in the thief's house. Also, coming to Rava and it came before Rava, and Rava said, "You have to pay because it was stolen." Amrulei Rabbanu Rava Geneva Babalni. No, it was stolen when the owner was there, and so therefore we'd be exempt. In the end, Rava was embarrassed was Sof going Milsa do Mesa Tuno enough. He was never working for him. He just went out to see, make sure he didn't put on too heavy a load. We're now up to the next Mishnah. Shoel es hapara. Let's say you borrow the cow. She'elo chatzi yom, b'sachar chatzi yom. You say I'm borrowing it for half a day, and I'm renting it for half a day. You might have said I'm just renting it for the whole day at half price, but you didn't say that. You said I'm borrowing it for half a day, and I'm renting it for half a day. Or you got two cows from your friend. You rented one and you borrowed one. And the animal died. So the Masho Omer, so the lender says, She'ula Mesa. He says the cow that was lent is the one that died, and you have to pay for the accident. Or Biyom Shahaisa She'ula Mesa, or the day that it was rented out, the day that it was borrowed out, it died, and so therefore you have to pay for it. Or on top of 97B, or Bishah Shahaisa She'ula Mesa, or at the time that it was borrowed, it died. Vahala Omer, whereas the borrower says, Eini Yodea. The borrower says, I don't know which, if it died when it was lent or died when it was rented. Then we're going to say that the borrower has to pay chayiv. Well, then the borrower has to pay. Why? Because the lender is claiming, that he's certain, and the borrower is claiming that he's not certain. And this is the principle of Bari Vishema. The lender is Bari, he's principal, and the borrower is unsure. So that's called Shema. And we have a principle, Rashi says, the Bari Vishema, Bari Adif. That if one of the claims is certain and the other one is uncertain, we follow the one who is certain. This is a dispute. The Gemara is going to explain between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. They say Bari V'Shema, Bari Adif. According to Rav Nachman and Rav Yochanan, they're going to argue Bari V'Shema, Lav Bari Adif. That we don't, just because one person is certain, we don't give his claim more weight. But the reason is because we're talking about a case where the shomer, the watchman, was obligated to take an oath, but in this case he can't take an oath. The watchman will be obligated to swear, but he can't swear, as the Gemara is going to explain. So that's two theories as to why the borrower would have to pay under these circumstances. So too, we say as socher omer skura. Let's say the opposite way. The renter says the one that was rented died, or biyom sha'isa skura mesa, or the day that it was rented died, or b'shah sha'isa skura mesa, or the time that it was rented died. V'hol omer eni yodea, and the lender or the owner says he doesn't know. Potter. Then you don't have to pay, because since there's no certain claim, it's Shema, and the claim is a Shema, and the person who's being asked to pay money says, "I'm certain it's not the case." You say Bari V'Shema Para Adif, or in this case, we would say, well, why wouldn't he take an oath? So we'll have to see that in the Gemara. The third case, Zeomer She'ula, the lender says the cow that was borrowed died. The Zeomer Sechura, and the borrower says the cow that was rented died. Yisheva socher sheskura mesa. Then the renter should take an oath that the rented animal died, and then it'll be exempt. Zelmer eni yodea, zelmer eni yodea. If both of them say that we don't know which one died, yachoku. Then they split the money, because this position of our Mishnah is like the position that we saw at the very beginning of Bava Kama, that says that if there's money that's in doubt, you're going to have to split the money. But this is only okay. So the Gemara says, "Shmas Mina." We learn from the first case of our Mishnah that if a person makes a claim of certainty and the other one says, "I'm not certain," that we learn from here, if Reuben says to Shimon, "You owe me $100," and Shimon says, "I don't know if I owe you the money or not," chayiv, and we say that Shimon would have to pay the money. If Reuben says, "You owe me $100," he says, "I don't know," that Shimon would have to pay. If that's the case, you have to do Rav Nachman. So maybe our Mishnah is there for a refutation of Rav Nachman. And the Idmar, because we learned, but we learned in his statement that if a person makes the claim, moving to Shimon, you owe me $100, and Shimon says, I don't know. Rav Huna Rav Yehuda say chayiv, that the person who's being claimed against must pay. That's like our Mishnah. But Rav Nachman Rav Yochanan, Amri Patur. So Rav Huna Rav Yehuda say Bari V'Shema Bari Adif. One claim is certain and the other one is not, that the certain claim takes precedence. But Rav Nachman Rav Yochanan, they say he's Patur. So if that's the case, our Mishnah seems to be a direct refutation against Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yochanan. Why is the Gemara only putting it as a question on Rav Nachman and not Rabbi Yochanan? So some say, the Tosfos say that this actually is a question on both of them. But it's just a different girsa. But others discuss this and try to answer that aspect of it. So the Gemara gives an answer. Why is this a question on how would Rav Nachman, who says that in the case of a certain claim against a possible claim, that under those circumstances he's exempt? So the Gemara explains, the answer is like Rav Nachman explains, that we're talking about a case, our Mishnah is referring to a case where he has to take an oath. The person who is the watchman must take an oath. He has to take an oath that he wasn't responsible for the rented object being negligent. But since he can't take an oath, therefore he has to pay. And Hachanami, here we're talking about this case, that he would have to take an oath. And what's the reason he'd have to take an oath? Because he's a shomer. And so since he can't take the oath, because he says, I don't know, therefore he has to pay. So the Gemara says, how can we say, how could there be a situation where we say that he really has to take an oath under these circumstances? The Gemara says, Kida Rava. Like Rava says in another place, the Amar Rava, and this is the case that Rava says, if a person says you owe me $100, if a person says, who means it's to Shimon, you owe me $100, and Shimon says, I really only owe you 50. So the first 50 I know I owe you, and the second 50 I don't know about that. So therefore, he's making a partial admission. So you would think that he'd have to pay. And so therefore, typically speaking, this is what's called a case of modev and mixas. In the case of partial admission, he has to swear. But since he can't swear, because he says, I don't know, in this case, since he can't take an oath, he'd have to pay. So that's what Rava said, is the case of where a person can't take an oath, and therefore you have to pay. And so therefore, we have to say that that's what our Mishnah is talking about. Mishkachas la reisha bishtayim. The Seifa b'shalosh, and we could say that this case of what's called an Asik Shvua appears in the first clause of our Mishnah in the case of the 2 cows, and it appears in the case of the second case of our Mishnah in the case of 3 cows, and we'll see what we're referring to here. Reisha b'shtayim, it appears in the case of our Mishnah, the first case of Mishnah with 2 cows. The Amrei shtei paros masarti lach palga diyoma. So he says, I gave to you 2 cows, palga diyoma b'sheila, upalga diyoma d'sliris. I gave to you 2 cows, half of the day for borrowing and half of the day for renting. Or inami chad yoma b'sheila v'chad yoma b'sliris. Or else 1 day for borrowing and 1 day for renting. Umeisu travayo be'idan sheila. And the lender claims that both of them died during the time of the loan. And the borrower says, Chada in be'idan she'ela meisa. And the borrower says, yes, indeed, one of them died during the time of the borrowing. Ve'idach lo yadana iba idan she'ela meisa iba idan slir meisa. And the other one, I don't know if it died during the time of the borrowing, during the time of the lending. In this case, because he can't take an oath, because the borrower can't take the oath because he's doing a partial admission, so he has to do a biblical oath. And since he can't take the oath because he's not sure about it, therefore he has to pay. Mishalim. And how do we have the case of 3 cows in the second clause? V'seifa b'shalosh. To Amarle, he says to him, Shalosh paros nasati. I lent you, I gave you 3 cows. Shtayim b'shela v'achas b'schliros. I gave you 3 cows, 2 as a loan and 1 as a rental. Umeisu hani tarti d'sheila. And these 2 that I lent you died. The Amarle Shoel, and the borrower says, in chada d'sheila, Mesa idach or yadana ida she'ela mesa with the kaima deschlirasi ida schliras mesa v'ada kaima de she'ela mitoch she'eno yachol hashavim mishalim. So again, what's this case? He says, I gave you 3 cows, 2 as a loan and 1 as a rental. And he says, the 2 that I lent you, they're the ones that died, and so therefore you have to pay for them. And the borrower says, yes, you gave me. Yes, one of the cows that you let me died, but the other one, I don't know if it was the loan cow that died, and the one that's alive is the rental cow, or if it was the rental cow that died and the one that's alive is the loan cow. And because, and so for this reason, since he can't take an oath, he's going to have to pay. So the Gemara says, so we're going to stop here for a day. The Gemara is going to go into the position of Rami Bar Chama. Again, we'll go over that as we start the next half. But if anybody has any questions, happy to address.
Thank you.